Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Kendra Buga. I am an architect and a watercolor artist here in Portland, Oregon. And today I'm going to share with you something that I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. This painting is of a waterfall, Silver Falls State Park in Oregon. And I want to break down what I see in the composition with you using a book from Michael Albala. If you haven't heard of this book before, I picked it up at the library the other day. Landscape painting, and it's really made for acrylic or oil painters, but there are parts in here that are applicable to any kind of painting or drawing. So in the section where he talks about choosing your subject, I came across some ideas that I'm like, wow, I don't know if I would have avoided mistakes if I had known this before, because I'm the type of person who tries something out first and then learns why I did a bad job afterwards. Does that sound familiar? Do you do that? I definitely like to try things out, just like this YouTube channel. The first few videos are really, really poorly edited, and this one's probably not much better, but I just keep going and I learn things along the way, and that's exactly how I go about painting. So he speaks about, let's find a good picture that really describes like a bad subject to use. So for instance, he has a picture of a garden right here, or some greenery, or even a trail, which would seem like a good subject because there's some perspective, but it has dappled sunlight, which gives it like a value problem. You know, the composition is one way, but then you have these lights and darks that are not going with it. Or just a flat like lake scene. So he says these are problem subjects, and I have painted my share of problem subjects. And then sometimes, by luck, I pick the kind of subject that actually turns out, and then I get all excited when I've painted something that I really like. So this is one such subject. At least I believe so. Because when I look at this, I see a good percentage of the painting is white, you know, and a good percentage has some darks, and all kinds of things in between. There, I see a sense of perspective here. You can see a bridge and where the water's going to, the pond that it filters to, and the river that it flows out to. So you kind of get a sense for shape and size here. The thing that I didn't realize when I was going to start this painting is that the focal point is, of course, the waterfall, but I don't know, maybe you should look at it first and say to yourself, where does your eye enter this painting? For me, this is the line of the dark and light, and then this little curve around, which looks like a puzzle piece. That's where my eye enters the painting. And then it hangs around here, and then it keeps circulating in this big circle. Let me know in the comments if that's how you feel that your eye enters and how it moves through this painting. I've painted things where my eye bounces around, which I think is interesting, and I've painted things where the eye kind of shoots off into a completely different, like the eye doesn't rest in the painting. I've done a lot of those. But this one's interesting because I feel like there's this circular movement of where the eye moves in the painting. And the other thing about color in this that I wasn't so sure, and I'm still not sure, and I keep watching this and looking at it to see if I believe that it's a good move, is that I have like a really kind of strong yellow then this like teal blue, and then this orange just kind of like stacked. And this feels very strong compared to what's going on here. But I rather like it for now. And I'm going to keep looking at this painting and deciding if it should stay as the yellow or if it should go darker. In real life, sorry, my camera decided that I was getting boring, so it just turned off. Editing. So, I was going to say, in real life, this side, this yellow, is definitely yellow because the sun is coming this way and is hitting this side of the hillside, and then it's hitting this side. And in fact, the waterfall is in complete shadow at the time of the day that we were here. And you know how waterfalls are. Well, not all waterfalls, but you know, they're going down into gullies, and this one is rather at the bottom of sort of a gully. So most of this is in shade most of the time, this waterfall here. So let's see, what else was a compositional kind of a thing that I wanted to share with you from Michael's book. He has a few paintings that are interesting where he says where the eye enters according to him and how it moves through the painting. Here and here. And you'll have to take a look at the book and see if you decide that it's the same for you. It's not the same for me in both of these paintings. I agree with the diagonals, and I agree with the motion and how your eye moves once it's in the painting, but my eye didn't enter the painting the same way. There was a couple of other really interesting ideas. I mean, I think that's very common that we understand that variation is important. So instead of a row of trees, as you might see them in real life, there's a lot more interest if we have a couple that are standing in front of the row and that they're completely varied. You know, this one is splitting off into two, total variation. That's a very interesting idea. In this idea, he's saying to counteract the horizontal subject with a diagonal, so putting in this like fence line or post line to create a diagonal, it creates a very different motion. And there was like one other thing that, this. So here, and again, this is all subjective, so you can decide if you agree with it or not. But he says, if one of your subjects, like these trees, are too close to the edge, it creates a kind of a tension, like this one, too close to the edge, it creates a kind of a tension in the picture plane. And so instead, bring your subjects in a little from the side so that there's a bit of space. I'm gonna have to pay attention to that because in this one, I mean, my tree isn't only close to the edge, I have a few trees off to this side, trying to create a little bit of foreground, but like they're like off the picture plane. So I'll have to decide if I was going to do this again, would I maybe make this into more of a horizontal painting or cut some of this part off. Another thing that he put in here that this will be old hat for a lot of you accomplished artists, but for any of you who's beginning. So this is a square piece of paper. I just cut off a piece of 12 by 12 from my roll. I have a big roll of watercolor paper. And so the square composition is supposed to be very settled and peaceful because it's not already dictating this sort of horizontal or vertical lines. It's just neutral. And so I thought that's actually, it's interesting for watercolor painting because waterfall painting, because the waterfalls are often super vertical, right? And actually kind of a challenge that way because just how high can you go with a painting before it's kind of an awkward shape. Anyway, I hadn't really thought about the size of my paper as something that is giving a gestural impact to the painting. Anyway, highly recommend this guy's book. I'm going to show the process video of the last parts of making this. If you've seen my previous video from the Silver Falls walk, especially part 2, that's where I started this one. This painting was a trial of Inktense pencils, in fact, and I just tried starting a painting with it, and most of the painting was done with Inktense pencils, as you'll see in the process video. Thanks for joining me, and enjoy the process part of this, and I'll be back next week. Bye. Okay, here we are. The painting part of this video. It is a beautiful day, Portland, Oregon today. And so I can almost forget the snow that was on the ground when I was on this hike just a couple weeks ago. I must say, just to the right of my active hand there, you see that orange sort of grouping of colors, which wasn't there in real life. I put the orange there to draw the eye that way. But I love how that texture got, how that texture came out, really. I mean, it's Inktense pencils for the most part, and maybe a little bit of watercolor. Like you see me here mixing up a little bit of kind of a deep greenish color to paint in those trees. By the way, one thing that I've always done, and I don't know, I've tried so many different kinds of palettes. I've bought a Quiller palette, and I've used travel palettes, and the one off to the right is a ceramic dish that I picked up at the Goodwill. I like that one, but I keep coming back to my yogurt lids. There's this really nice thing about a yogurt lid because it really limits your palette, and so on the yogurt lid, directly in the middle of the screen right now, directly to the top middle, that one has on some New Gamboge. That's a yellow color. It has some Quin Gold, I believe, and then cerulean, which is the blue. So that makes some really great greens, and it can make some very, very varied greens, especially if I am careful to mix on the paper, which is to say, if I take some of the yellow and put it down, and then I poke in a little bit to the cerulean, and then put that down next to the yellow and let it mix up on the watercolor paper. So if you've been paying attention to what I'm doing on the screen and not what I'm saying, I picked up one of the Inktense pencils to bump up the values and to quickly get in some browns into those trees. And I'm careful to put in the color on the left side of the tree limbs because that's the side that's getting the shade in real life. Also, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make some interesting divisions. By that I mean the triangles and other shapes that you see between the tree limbs and branches. That was more important to me than any kind of reality in the actual branches, because I have a plan for those shapes in between the tree branches. If you watched my last video about painting the waterfall in the other way that I painted it, you'll know what my plan is, because it's the same plan. So while that's drying, because of course those tree branches have to dry completely before I start touching into those yellows that are next to them, otherwise I'll just have these back runs that I didn't intend. So now I move to a different part of the painting, and I'm bumping up the values. That's all I'm doing, is I'm making it really dark towards the top of the painting. And I suppose you could take a minute and just sort of imagine how that will be if you didn't look too carefully in the finished painting before, but it makes a massive difference. So you'll see the Stabilo pencil is the deep black, but of course I'm mixing in all kinds of other colors to establish variation in that, in the dark values up at the top, and then bringing them down a little bit into the hillside. I'm going to keep working with these different patterns and ways of making shape, the little dots or the bit of lines. I think these are quite interesting, different ways to create a shape with patterned marking. And here you see me being careful to leave some of the lighter colors in there. I don't want to paint all the way over. I want to leave some of the lightest lights, but just increase that dark value, because the darker the values are on that hillside, and especially towards the top, the more the waterfall and the river will really pop and really be prominent in the picture. Every time you see me dip the pencil into the water, that's trying to activate the lead before I start drawing. It gives a very dark line, but it's perhaps not practical for the whole painting because I'd have to keep dipping it in too much. So I dip it in a little bit, get it a little activated, and then finish the job with the paintbrush. So this is putting in a little bit of reality to the painting. There's a bridge across the top, which you can see outlined now that I've put in some darks. And this is the bit of hillside that supports the other side of that bridge. In real life, you come down, you go across that bridge after having seen a different waterfall that's really tall. Anyway, you come down, you go across that bridge and around off to the left side of my painting, and then down around here, and then you follow this river for a while. At least that's how it goes if you walk in a semicircle. If you walk in the counterclockwise way, there's a loop trail that you can go on, and most people seemed to go in the clockwise direction, or what I saw as clockwise. But we went in the opposite direction, which was kind of great because we didn't have anybody ahead of us or behind us. We really just passed people along the trail. Most of the colors that you're seeing now in the Inktense set are the ones from their 12 pencil set. Since then, and at the very end of this painting, you'll see a whole bunch more Inktense pencils, because I decided that I like them so much that I should spend some more time exploring all the colors that they have. They're so very vibrant, and this is very attractive. I think a lot of us who are watercolor artists get so used to the like muted and of course transparent nature of our regular paints that when we get involved with a paint that is vibrant, like another thing I like to do in the summers is to use alcohol ink on Yupo paper. If you haven't ever seen that, go find some YouTube videos. Alcohol ink on Yupo. It's Y-U-P-O. Yupo is also a kind of, it's not a paper, it's really a plastic film like vellum. And you can paint watercolor on that film, and it kind of floats across the top, which is an interesting effect. But if you use alcohol inks on top of it, it's super vibrant, and it really, it has such a mesmerizing effect. So, and of course, I was introduced to these colors by my watercolor group. We all sat outside at one of their backyards one day, and those who had a lot of alcohol inks shared and let us all kind of get totally mesmerized by the brilliant colors that are so unusual for our medium. So I think the same is for the Inktense pencils. They're so vibrant and so bright from the get-go that it's a little bit addictive and super attractive. You see me rolling up a piece of the paper towel because I wanted to bring some lightness into those trees that I sort of lost in the dark colors. I still wanted to have a sense of the trees on the top of the hillside, sort of perhaps an abstract sense, but still a sense. So I'm trying to make my blotting tool into something that can only blot out the parts I want. All right. Now, off to the left, you can see all of those brand new Inktense pencils because they have the, what do you call that? The UPC sticker on the new ones. And my new pencil holder. This one, nobody has, well, you haven't seen before because this one wasn't even in my tutorial that I put out last week. I was so excited. I put together a tool for myself, which is an art roll or a pencil roll, and it was so very easy that I decided to make a tutorial, which I think is the first time that I've put together a YouTube tutorial. That was a lot of fun. Okay, so here now you see the strategy that I was talking about with painting in between the tree shapes, into the tree branch shapes. I'm painting in colors, and I am painting in slightly different colors in between each of them. And here I'm trying to decide, do I go with sort of green colors on the bottom and then go up? As I go up, do I make it more and more golden yellow, or do I allow for the green colors toward the top? Because by now we've fully departed from the original image, and I'm completely just looking at the painting for direction about what to do next. And of course you can see, well, not only from the pencil roll, but from my shirt, that I'm in a different day. I think that the recordings from this video for today is taken over maybe 5 different days. So what I do in the between times when I'm not painting this is I put it up on my easel. I have a little table easel that my friend Mary gave to me, and I put it there and I pretty much look at it all day long while I am homeschooling my teenagers. So while I'm working out quadratic equations with one of them and waiting for them to solve something, I look over at my painting and I think about what I'm going to do next when school is finished and I can paint again. So let's see here. I'm activating that piece of paper with some clean water before I put down the Inktense pencil. That's what you were just seeing. And I'm sort of trying out some of the new colors just right there on my painting. It's kind of brave. I wasn't doing any kind of swatching. I was just swatching right on my painting. Since then, I've done a bit of the swatching, but I haven't finished. In fact, I think I have a piece in this video where I show you some of the colors that I swatched. So you see me moving around the painting quite a bit, not staying in one place, and that's because as I work in one area and get it nice and wet, it's really important to stay away from that area for a while so that it can dry, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting one area the way you like it and then painting that into an adjacent area and then losing it all because it runs into that area. So this is either a new day or everything is dried, and you saw me activate that area with some water, and now I'm going in with the Inktense pencils and trying to come up with a shape. So I'm doing circles with the yellow pencil, and I was doing some sort of lines with the green pencil and trying to decide if that's what I want. And maybe not so bright, so I dab it out a little bit. With the Inktense pencils, one thing to remember is once it has set, you can't really lift it. I mean, the vibrance comes along with that. It's very vibrant, but it's ink. It's not a watercolor pencil, so you can't lift it as effectively. You can lift it a little bit while it's still wet, but once it's dry, it's set. So there we go. I'm adding in a little bit of texture and color, but keeping that side decidedly in the yellows. There we go. Now I slowed it right down just so that you could see how I swatch. I make a darkest dark and a lightest light, and then I make all those little dots just so that I can see how it shows up. Since I use that texture of dots a lot, I figured that's important to include in my swatching. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play some music for the rest of this video. At the end, I figured out how to put what we call end page, so I have a cute little end page at the very end. And I will be back in about a week with my next video, which will be about hellebore fluff.